Welcome students to Session Zero University. My name is Professor Rainier, one of the many teachers here at the university, but for right now, I am your orientation representative. Here at SCU, you will find a variety of professors well-versed in the realms of tabletop role-playing games, offering you their insight on every facet of TTRPGs. Perhaps you'd like to take a homebrewing class with our potions professor, or join in on a role-playing class put on by our theater department. Be sure to take all your required general education classes like Character Creation 101, Intro to Worldbuilding, and NPC Voices for Beginners to help round out your education. There are also plenty of electives and intramural opportunities to add some fun and diversity into your everyday schedule. So get out there and learn. Whether you're hoping to graduate with a degree in DMing or playing It Matters Not, there's always room to grow at Session Zero University.
All right, students, this is Dr. Bimble's class for Worldbuilding 101, Discovery of New Worlds and How to Explore It. If you are here looking for Professor Thimble and the art of terraforming, you've come to the wrong class. And please, get out. Now, I am in quite a predicament. Unfortunately, I seem to be a bit under the weather at this time, so I will hand it off to my TA, this human, and they will do what they need to do. So, I will be off now.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Session Zero University. You are here for class, and today we have a phenomenal professor to speak to you today and help you to learn about TTRPGs, the very many aspects of them, and more specifically, we're going to jump into one of those many aspects. We're going to be talking about world building today. And joining us to teach us all about the intricacies and the exciting world of world building is Doug Grosser. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be on.
Yeah, well, we're so excited to have you. And world building is a big topic. I mean, we're talking a whole world, right? You look at our world, the Earth, and everything like that, and there's so many complexities to it. So, jumping off, just kind of right off the bat, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, we want to know who you are and what your experiences are with TTRPGs, but then tell us a little bit about kind of an overview of what we'll be looking at as far as world building goes.
Sure, of course. So, hello, everybody. My name is Doug Grosser. I've been a DM for going on for almost a decade now.
Wow.
So I have had quite a bit of experience, and I've had the pleasure of being able to join Skylar in real life for some fun TTRPG experiences. But I've built multiple worlds, whether it be for one-shots. I actually, my favorite thing that I got this past year for Christmas gift was I got a map of one of my personal worlds called Ace Room,
Nice.
which we'll dive into a little bit later. But I've built multiple worlds, whether it be small one-shots, just little playgrounds, or big ones that can encompass eons of lore and worlds. So I have a little bit of an inkling, and I'd like to be able to share it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're excited to learn because, I mean, I keep saying it, but world building is huge. It's a big thing. There's a lot of elements to it. And I think there's probably, and we'll probably go into this, but there's a lot of different ways that you can do world building. You don't have to go so complex as to figure out every minute detail when you're about to run a campaign, right? There's a certain level of world building for any given story that you're trying to create with your players.
Exactly. And so it is daunting, especially if you want to make a world. But when you make a world, you don't need to make 5 different continents, 4 different oceans, cities upon complex hierarchies and forms of government. You don't need to do that instantly. There's multiple ways to be able to start off, and then you can grow out. A world can start as a point and then become a full plane. So to start off, I think the best thing to do is, why make a world?
Yeah.
So world building can do a lot of things. And if any of you who are listening have listened to the one-shot episode, you will probably hear a couple things that overlap.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the main things, and things that have helped me for what I've wanted to do for many of my campaigns, is it'll help inspire either long-term or short-term campaigns. So whether it be surrounded by a specific concept or maybe just an idea you had for a place, it'll help you develop those areas and the surroundings to be able to help develop what your players and what you can help explore.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking concept, right, we're talking kind of like the overarching narrative.
Yeah, so it could be for you or any other individual, a concept could be as major as I want to have something that deals with the anger of loss or the complexities of power-hungry hierarchies, people who are trying to take down governments and things like that. Or it could be something as simple as I like this one class, I want to make something that does something here.
Right. And then of course place, that's pretty straightforward for the most part. Cities, countries, maybe a continent even, that everything kind of takes place on, and that's where you're kind of focusing your world building on.
Mm-hmm. And then similar to wanting to be able to try out those types of concepts, you can also try a player concept. So you might want to try a theme for a one-shot. So like, for example, you guys are very familiar with the Avatar universe.
Oh, yeah,
so
absolutely.
Maybe like multiple elements coming together with fire, wind, earth, water, or maybe something else, maybe mind, body, soul, something of that nature. And you want to try to develop. World building can help you flesh out where these things can happen, why these things are happening, and what you can be able to explore with them.
Absolutely. And I like that you mentioned that too, that a player's character can be an element in helping you as like the game master, the DM, whatever the term is for whatever TTRPG it is that you're playing, to create that world and to build that world, right? That character is going to bring elements of whatever their character's like culture, background, so on and so forth is. And that's going to flow into your world because obviously it's taking place in your world.
Oh, yeah.
To help you develop it.
Yeah. And I'll dive into a little bit more on that on some of the techniques later. Another thing that you could be able to do is that you just want to have a sandbox and just something that you can be able to do for the future, whether it be you want to be able to live there or have things that you want to be able to do, or something that you just want to have your players to be able to jump out in. You want to try a new class or try a new enemy type. Well, you can just plop them right into the world that you already have. It's just something that people want to enjoy. And that is one thing that we'll get into later, but you want to enjoy your world. It's not something
absolutely.
It's not something that you want to be able to just put in there just for the heck of it. You want to it doesn't necessarily have to be a good thing too. It could be like, a power structure that you don't like, the monarchies or the governments that are very corrupt. But it's something that you want to either have change, whether it be by your players or by the people in there, but it's something that you want to be in, something that you want to be able to enjoy. So you want to be in this world. Give it color.
So you've got this world and you want to flesh it out to give a little bit more immersion for your players who are going to be playing in it. What are we looking for? What kind of things should we be trying to either target or maybe questions that we want to ask ourselves as far as that goes?
So it really comes down to who you and your players are. And that's actually one of the reasons why to make a world. Sometimes you just want to be able to try something out. So one of my favorite systems is the One Quiet Year, where literally you end up building a world. It's by a very narrow concept, but you build a world season by season by having individuals come in, by having events happen, and then you can help create something that brings that immersion together. So it is something that it is not necessarily automatically going to be done, but it's something that you can help build towards.
Yes, absolutely. I've seen, I listened to in the Adventure Zone, they did the One Quiet Year for one of their campaigns, and it was really cool to be able to hear all of them, the DM, which is usually Griffin, and then of course his brothers and dad, who were all the players, working together, playing through this Quiet Year to use it as a way to build the world that they would inevitably be playing with the D&D rule set, I think is what they used, but to build the world first and then play into it, which was really cool. And I know Cameron and I have both talked about, like, we really got to do that sometime. We got to try this out and play into it. So maybe that'll be something we'll do in the future.
Funny thing is Cameron already has some experience because one of the campaigns that he and I are in, where I'm DMing, we did that, and we're in a space campaign with it.
Nice.
So it is not something that is so narrow that you have to be able to have it in one setting. Because that's another thing for world building too. You could want to explore a genre. You don't have to just be D&D. You could do a space campaign, a space opera that does various other systems. You could be able to do a heist world, or just like a small narrow setting for Blades in the Dark, one of those various other systems. There's the whole Daggerheart rule set that's coming out
soon.
That you can also be able to look at a more narrow set, while still fantasy, but looking at a new area that has not been done before.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I guess with that kind of playing off of that, right? So systems aren't necessarily directly tied to the world building element. They are kind of built towards a theme, right? If you want to, as you mentioned, if you want to run something within the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender, use Avatar Legends, the system, because it's built to handle that. And we talked a lot about this in our last Session Zero University, where we talked all about systems and running them for different purposes, right? And Blades in the Dark, it's fantastic for heist. With that being said, that doesn't necessarily have to limit the world that you build them within, right?
Exactly.
Just because D&D is built for the Forgotten Realms, that doesn't mean that you can't handle your own personal world sort of within a fantasy, medieval fantasy to some extent theme. And of course, people have done some other crazy stuff, superheroes and modern day stuff and whatnot within the D&D rule set. But with that being said, Doug, if I can ask, what is the sort of benefit between, obviously these systems a lot of times create worlds, but what benefit is it for me to sit down and start to make and create my own world to put that system into?
So it can go hand in hand of what you want to be able to do and using those systems, but you can also use those systems to help create your world. We'll get into that in a little bit. But by being able to have your own world in play, you can be able to help formulate what will work out best for your system. If you are looking for that medieval setting, the one that everybody goes to is for D&D 5e. Or you could look at Pathfinder or something similar in that vein. But you may not want to do a world that is just tied to medieval times. You want to be in the future. You want to be able to focus on something that's in space. They have a bunch of Star Wars tabletop RPGs that you can be able to use their systems. Hell, you could even try to make your own. One of the ones that, actually, funny that you mentioned Adventure Zone, they actually made their own system for this latest one, which is this superhero Saturday morning cartoon version, where it's essentially like a D8 system. You roll it, and if you get above a 4, you succeed. But this world is specifically like, they're called abnables because they're basically the humanoid animals that have abs because they're super buff and strong.
Nice.
But they created that world from, inspiration from the real world, and then they created that system around it. But you can also do something in reverse. And I'll get into that in a little bit when we talk about actually how do you set up a world.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny though. I know we both have used Adventure Zone as kind of examples within so far with this, and I know I've used it several times in the past. Just obviously big fans of the stuff that they're creating over there. So
exactly.
Awesome. So what is kind of, before we jump into some of the more detailed stuff, because we keep saying we'll talk about that here in a second. What should be the goal of this class before we just jump into things, right?
Yes. So the goal of this class is, I'm not going to give you a world. I will give you an example world which is my own. But at the end of the day, it is not going to be something that will be 100% flesh out. I'm not going to give you a lore document or something that has a big long history and all these individual places. What I'm going to give you are the tools that help you start making your own world, or start making places that you can expand into a world. A good way to think about it is that for this world building, you're going to start using your senses, the 5 senses of seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and feeling. What are you actually seeing here? What is in your world? What are you hearing? Why is it looking this way? What's on the air, and why is it so maybe acrid or very moist? What is causing all this stuff to happen? It helps with a lot of the what questions. And while we'll get into like some questions that help the lore side, the why and the how, it won't give you the individual places just yet. It'll give you a point where you can use your own inspiration and then bloom it into your own place.
Right. Because story isn't necessarily the world.
Correct.
Right. The world is everything that's around you, but the story develops within the world, and that's and honestly, that's part of what you're about to create with the people that you're going to sit down with and play inside of this world, is the stories that inhabit this world.
Right. And some of those ideas of what you want to tell for a story can help bloom a thought so that you can be able to help create this world. But it is not the full way to get from A to Z. It won't help you do that. It will help you give you those individual points that your players can go to, whether it be from A to B, or maybe A to F, or A to
2. It's completely random because your players will want to develop the story along with you.
Absolutely. It's sort of part of the skeleton, right? You're going to have the mechanics of the game. That is part of the well, that's the skeleton of the game aspect of TTRPGs. But building your world is going to be the skeleton towards the story and how that's all going to get set up.
Yes, exactly.
I like it. Very cool. So when should we be making a world? When should I decide to myself, I'm going to make a world and we're going to use it for a TTRPG?
Yeah, so the best time to actually be able to make a world is when you're trying to do those one-shots, when you're trying to plan something out that's a little bit on the smaller scale. You can help control. Maybe you have this point of inspiration. You went on a grand trip to, let's say, Hawaii, and you found this beautiful green canyon area that's almost, they call it the Grand Canyon of the Pacific, called the Waimea Valley. And then you're like, I like that. I want to be able to put that into a place. I want to use that, pulling on my own inspirations of what I've done in the past. You want to be able to help create a place that your players can also have that awe and inspiration.
Absolutely.
And then it's a place that either you or your players want to be. Maybe someplace interesting, or at least something that will be able to help develop the story.
Absolutely. Obviously, you want to play, and we talked about this before in previous episodes, but you want to play something that you as the DM are going to fall in love with, but you also obviously want your players to fall in love with. So if you're going to build a world, make sure it's something that everybody can enjoy and not just something that you're building this, you're not writing yourself a book. You're not writing a book built on, exactly how you want things, because at the end of the day, your players are going to go into this world and things are going to change. Things are going to happen.
Right,
and they're going to be a little bit out of your control, to be honest with you. So yeah, you don't want to definitely lock yourself in by just saying, I'm just going to create this world. And it's like, well, what's the point of having these players in there if it's going to be exactly the way that you want it? You want to keep it loose.
Right. Solo D&D is basically writing a book. That's all it is.
Exactly. And there are some interesting solo TTRPGs that I've been sort of noticing a little bit here and there lately, but even those, it's already kind of like some pre-established stuff. Anyway, that's beside the point.
And for the writers out there, you can definitely use these techniques to help you build your world and then maybe create a novel from it, or eventually go into the TTRPG aspect.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is a dual purpose here. This whole class, right? You don't have to, this isn't just for TTRPG creators. This is for everybody who's trying to make their own interesting worlds. Yes. All right. So I'm a GM. Obviously, I've run a lot of campaigns. Most of what I do is homebrew, and so I'm always looking for tips and tricks and ways to build, or techniques, you could even say, to world build, because it's a lot. It's a lot to handle. It's a lot to take on. So, what would you advise as far as let's go right from the beginning, right? We're setting up. We've seen something that's inspired us, kind of like you mentioned with the Hawaii thing. I want to start building a world that surrounds us. Where should I start?
So before anything, before you even start building the world, building points, you need to have some way of documenting it. You need to be able to have some way to be able to let yourself know in the future, or even start to help put your idea onto a pen and paper, on the laptop, a chisel and stone. It doesn't matter. You just need something to write down. Now, there may be revisions along the way. You might help develop it as you start writing it down, and you're like, oh, wait, no, it'd be cool if I could be able to add this. Or, that doesn't make sense. I probably shouldn't have that part. But you need some way to be able to know what it is and then be able to go back to it. Anytime I make a world, and it's the same thing for DMs who are making a session. Anytime you start any of this stuff, you need to have a design document. Now, you don't have to have 20,000 pages. You don't need to have a novel that goes through it, but it just has to have some definition of what you're doing, what this is, where this is, how this is, things like that. You don't have to necessarily answer them all in that immediate when you create it. You just have to be able to have the framework.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Start with, basics, keep it small, and then we're going to work outwards.
Right. And so diving into that, going from that point, with a good transition. So now you have the framework, you have a document, you're inspired. What can you do? Well, the great thing about human imagination is that it is limitless. You can imagine anything, being in space while breathing underwater at the same time. How does that happen? Nobody knows. It's just happening. But to be able to help make your world and help make it be a place, you have to make boundaries. Your world can be infinite. It could be the whole galaxy if you wanted to, if you don't help boundary it. Now, even that, you could help you can make a universe, and that's your world building, and you just start having those external boundaries. But you don't want to start allowing yourself to just keep going and building without having something there. And that's where I create one of the things that helped me in making either Acerum or other things in the past is what I like to call the house of the world method, which is essentially you're creating 5 boundaries. You're creating 4 walls and then a 5th ceiling, which the 5th ceiling, we'll get into that in a little bit. But to help establish your world, the first thing that I always try to do is what are the in-game, in-universe physical laws you want to establish? Are these are the ideas of magic and technology? Can you actually, individuals, can they fly? In like thinking of anime, is this the world of My Hero Academia and everybody has quirks? People have superpowers? Or is it something that is more grounded in reality, even using our own world as the point? Where are those physical laws?
Yeah. Does gravity exist? Or do people
exactly.
kind of have the ability to float around? And obviously, there are going to be things that stem from that, which is what's really exciting, right? I even saw, recently I saw on some subreddit, somebody was asking the question, they're like, well, in a world full, and I'm glad that you used the My Hero Academia, in a world full of people with superpowers, what are going to be like those jobs that just either don't make sense or absolutely suck at that point, right?
Right.
And people were talking about, they're like, well, defense lawyers, that's not going to be a fun job because how are you going to be able to prove that this person wasn't under the effects of mind control or something along those lines? You know what I mean? And I was like, that's kind of what goes into that whole, you got to create that framework for the rules and what's going on in this world, or how does the world, is it going to work with whatever it is that you're kind of jumping into, right? And those are the questions that you ask yourself. And the beauty of it is it's not a problem, right? It's not a bad thing to ask those questions, be like, ooh, I'm challenged by this question. That is going to help you build. That's going to help you say, well, to combat that fact, I'm going to have to put something in place that logically would stem in this world, that logically would happen and inevitably kind of work its way into the system, because people in this world would see that and say, oh, we need to fix that, or we need a rule for when that happens. That's why we have laws and things like that. But sorry, I'm getting way out of line here.
No, that is perfect, because you don't have to answer those questions in this building of the framework, but those are good points to even help like build your story or build what will develop inside this world. But that is something that you want to establish. Is this like a world of superheroes, or is this a world of life and death, a world of gods, just something that's physical that you can be able to understand? And then from that point, we talked about the physical laws, but the next wall is, what about the metaphysical laws that you want to establish? The things that are not specifically in the world, but what you are doing. So is there a game system that you want to be able to use? Is there something that you were inspired by that, oh, this will help me develop my world, or this aligns with what I want to be able to tell with this physical world? And maybe there's not. Maybe there's something that you want to either homebrew or something that you just haven't found yet, and that's okay. That is something that you now have a door rather than a full wall. It is something that you will develop along the line, and you just need that inspiration.
And ideally, you explore that idea too, and not just like slap we're going to do D&D on this one,
Right, exactly. And slapping D&D, a lot of people think, oh, now I have to make a sandbox world and be ready for anything and everything. But that's not necessarily the case. You can make something that is specific for your campaign or an event. Like when you're making a world, and this will actually tie into one of the later ones, you don't have to just make literally a world. Your world can be as small as a day camp. It doesn't have to be huge. It is just something that your players are at, the whats and the wheres that they can be able to establish.
Absolutely. And the mechanics will work around those things. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to make these broad mechanics that could work for any given situation potentially. And it's something we've talked about on previous episodes. When you get super broad with the mechanics, you end up losing a lot of that sort of personality that the game has, right? You can get really specific and say, we're at day camp, right? You got to roll this check to see how well your campfire works or something like that, or how fast you can canoe. And you've got a whole mechanic set up for, you racing your canoe against the other team's canoe and seeing who gets to the other end of the lake first.
Right, exactly. And those metaphysical laws, the game system can help you establish what that physical world is. Because now if you are doing something that is with superheroes, you can use a game system that, like some of the powered by the apocalypse superhero stuff, you can use that system to help you develop that world. Or there could be stuff that you just don't have yet, and that's okay. Not everything has to be established right from the get-go. A world is ever building. And that is one thing I'll touch upon again. A world progresses. You do not have to have everything set in stone. A world is not made of stone. It could be made of water. A world could be made of molten earth that is still flowing, like our own. Things will change.
Absolutely.
But that is okay. But some of the things that you want to know before you continue on is, what are you trying to accomplish? What is the theme or the genre of this world? This goes back to that physical property. Is this like a cyberpunk fantasy? Is this something that you are now in the advanced technology stages? Or is it something that is back to that medieval section? Is it something that is more aligned with D&D? What is the time frame that you are in? Now, you can be able to have it so that in the future, if this is a sandbox world, you could have it so that it'll eventually develop into one of those future ones. Like one of my favorite authors, Brandon Sanderson, he has the whole Mistborn trilogy. It starts, or it's actually a sexology, a dual trilogy. But you have the original trilogy of Mistborn, that you have this medieval setting. And then it goes on into this kind of not cyberpunk, but most steampunk, almost like advanced technology. And that is something that you can be able to help evolve as your world evolves as well. But what do you start with? What is your technology when you're telling the story, when you're developing this world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you're not limited by any means to a singular genre per se. I mean, obviously you want to make things logical. You want to make things flow nicely. So it's kind of weird when you have a sci-fi world over here with UFOs and lasers that can destroy entire buildings. And then you've got a medieval society that exists over on the other side of the world.
Right.
And somehow they're still alive, even though the laser beam people are don't like them and could easily just wipe them out with a nuclear destruction or something in seconds.
Exactly. And the other thing, too, that this can really help establish is a theme. And this theme could not, and I don't mean just like a social theme, like, evil is bad and we have to conquer and rule out all evil. I mean, like, it could be a physical theme. So, like, for example, another big inspiration for me is the Dimension 20.
Dimension 20, yeah.
Yep. So one of the ones that they did that I adore, one of the campaigns, was A Crown of Candy. Essentially, it is a world where everybody is a food object. Like there are sugar people, there are vegetable people, there are meat people, there are dairy people. And that can be a theme. That's just an interesting topic to be able to talk about. And that could be just something you think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's creating a whole new world in and of itself, right? Like it's bizarre where you can draw inspiration from, but it's also really interesting to see where people have managed to draw inspiration from. Like one day they just popped open the fridge and they looked at their items and they said, what if these were like kingdoms? And you had different people from different kingdoms that represented by the food group. Like it's crazy to think about, but it's really cool.
Right.
With that being said, obviously you're the GM, or DM or whatever, and you're creating this world that you're going to set your players into. But what about your players? How are they going to impact the world in some way, shape, or form? Are they going to contribute to the world building in some way, or are they kind of locked in?
So that depends on what you're trying to establish. Again, it goes back to how you're setting up this world. Is it something that will start as a sandbox that you'll bring your players in and then they can help develop from the inside? This is just the framework. You could have it so that the framework is built by multiple people, so that it's not just you putting up the walls for this world. You can have people come in as well. But that's what you establish from the beginning. Is this going to be, that's part of the metaphysical thing. Is this something that you establish, or is this something that you have other people collaborate on? Right. And speaking of collaborating with people and then bringing them in, what is the state of the world is the final wall. Is this a big world, like we were mentioning before? Is this a whole universe, or is this just a day camp? Is the city the size of a country, like some of the, for D&D and Magic the Gathering, the Ravnica stuff? Or is it just a village with about a dozen people, and that's all we're focusing on? By establishing what the state of the world, what size it is, you can help be able to get those ideas into one place and help move it forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just going over everything that we talked about before. So 5 boundaries. This is the house of the world, right? There's what are the physical laws that you want to establish? That's one of those walls.
Yep.
What are the metaphysical laws? That's kind of your outside metagame, the more technical aspect of the mechanics of the world that you're going to be in. You've got the theme or genre.
Yes.
Which, of course, it is what it is. Is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy? So on and so forth. What is the state of the world and the size of it, which you were just talking about? And then, is the world a vacuum?
Yes, that is the ceiling. And the thing about is the world a vacuum is the question of, are you using your own stuff? Is this 100% homebrew, or like Avatar Legends? Are you using that? With this roof, is this already a pre-established roof of what you can be able to do? You're in a world of Avatar. You have air bisons. You have benders and things like that. What are you limited by?
Right.
Or is this?
I love that metaphor so much. The roof is where you're like kind of stopping yourself at as far as what you're drawing the inspiration from and where you're going to take that. That's cool. Yes. Sorry, I just needed to chime in there. That was awesome.
No, that's perfect. And it helps establish what is happening. So
Right.
So now you have a framework. Now you have what it is that is here. But it is a shell. It does not have things that have detail. It does not have the color of what you want. You have ideas, but now you have to start building in. This is where the next step comes in. This is world detail. Okay. This is where you take your boundaries and then you either start big and go small, or start small and go big. And we'll dive into both of those in just a sec. So, for example, if you start small and go big, this is something I like to call ballooning. Mm-hmm. You start with a single small thing, an item, a person, a place of establishment. Then you start increasing in scope. You start going out and circling. What exactly is happening in this area? So one of the examples that I've done for Ace Room in this world, I wanted to be able to have an individual or maybe a group of individuals that are a protectorate group. People who actually come and be able to help others. So start there. Okay. How are they actually going to protect the people? Well, they're going to travel around and they're going to have methods of being able to do that. And they're going to have, places of establishment. They're going to have to go to either base camps or things of that nature. Mm-hmm. As they go to those places, how are they viewed in those areas? Are they seen with good or ill intent? Are they people that people want to have, or are they shunned? And then once they are there, how are they doing it? What are they doing in those areas? So as you can see, by ballooning, you can help create those plot hooks and things that will want people to understand, oh, so what is going on over there? What is happening? And so
interesting.
So that helps.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, start small, go big, right? And I love that your example is honestly a perfect one, right? These people are traveling around to do their duty as protectors, right? So you're taking this small group, you're establishing them as kind of the baseline where your world is kind of building from. They're traveling around. You say, okay, they traveled to this place. What is this place like? What is their culture like? Like you said, how do they feel about these protectors? Do they like them? Do they dislike them? What are they being protected from in this case, right? Now you've got another city or another place that you've established and you've built a chunk of world. Now these protectors travel to the next place. They start to help you build within that next place that you're going to be adding to your world.
Right. And like a balloon, whether you're inflating it or say you are the individual and you're rising up on the balloon, you don't just see a single line going in one direction. You see things overall in all sides starting to expand. Absolutely. In the same example, when I was grading this group, when they are protecting, what are they protecting it from? Well, we were talking about how they're going to these different areas. Well, they're protecting it from these outside forces. This world is meant for D&D, so it's protecting them from the planes. Well, they're protecting from the planes. What is in the world already to help protect them? Are they doing it themselves? Well, there are established spires that help create this almost invisible shield that protects from the outside world from coming in. Things like that. And that is something that was developed as you balloon out, just to be able to have that inspiration. And then with that group, you can be able to see a bigger picture of what they do.
Wow.
And so now we've got starting small, going big. Well,
Now, or is it big to small now?
yes, exactly. This is now what I like to call diving. You're diving into something. One of my favorite examples is in this world, there's an area of magic that is more concentrated than anywhere else. And that is where it came out to the kingdom of either. Just the typical thing that you would see in any kind of fantasy genre. So you have this kingdom of either. Okay, cool. Well, so what are they? Are they a power hungry organization, or are they, peaceful? Well, I was thinking when you have a bunch of magic in one place, sometimes you're not satisfied with just that. So they're ever expanding. Well, okay, so let's dive more into that. If they are power hungry, how are they set up? Is it something that you have a hierarchy, or is it a monarchy? Well, with it being so power hungry, you're thinking, okay, there has to be somebody on top, somebody who is the best. But there is this drive to be better than other people. So there are these layers, there are these tiers that people want to be in. And that's where there is a various hierarchy system that is there, where you have the highest of the high, the King Arcanum, who is the top of magic. And then you have the lowly scribes who are trying to get up to that location. Okay,
Absolutely.
then diving in more. Okay, so how do the people inside this kingdom, inside this, let's say the capital, feel about this? Well, if they're all knowing this and knowing that they are the most magical of the people and that they are the best, well, they're probably going to be pretty arrogant. They're probably going to be those individuals who are like, oh, I'm better than everybody else. I don't want anybody else to be able to come up to my location. Well, that's a really, really cool idea. But is everybody like this? Well, diving in deeper, no. In this area, not everybody is that grand magician or has a great amount of magic. They're still people. Everybody is different. And not everybody is just naturally talented with magic. And then you know that you have that. Well, you dive even deeper. Is there an individual that feels this way that might not be just okay with it? And it turns out, no. People don't like it when you're stepping on them. And that's where I created the individual who creates this other organization. It was called the Ink Stained. Those who are seen as a blemish on the society. And because they are inked with the lack of magic, they are gathering others who feel this discontent. And they want to be able to do something.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing how much can stem out of that. And like you said, just because you're starting big, right? You don't have a lot of detail yet, right? You've got a very broad concept, and then you're just diving in and in and in. It's like zooming in on Google Maps, right? Yeah. Like you've got, wow, this is the whole United States of America. I'm going to click this one spot, and you zoom in. Oh, there's the borders that I can see for the city or the states. Zoom in a little bit more. Okay, now I'm seeing cities pop up, names of cities. Zoom in a little bit more and a little bit more until you can see the street view, and you're seeing people, and you're seeing houses, and you're seeing decorations and greenery or whatever else. And yeah, so it's amazing how much detail can start to spawn from starting so big. And I would argue that this is actually exactly how I created the Criminals of Isla Numa's campaign that we're playing through for Session Zero Heroes. Is I said, okay, the entire thing is going to take place in the city of Isla Numas. So I said, here's my city. And then I said, okay, what districts exist within the city? Because not everybody is just part of, I mean, this is one big city. It's a lot to just throw at my players to say, this is just one big area. Here you go. So I was like, I need to break it down somehow and help establish a little bit of the different cultures that are going on within the city. So then I made the districts. And then in each district, you say, what's going on in each district? What exists in each district that could become plot points for the players to play in? And then you just dive deeper and deeper and deeper. So I love that. I dove, Doug.
Yeah, you dove really hard. And that is what the diving is really good for. Diving is really good for creating your starting point, making it so that your players know what is happening at this location. You have an idea of what's happening in the surrounding even if the players are only familiar with the one point at this point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then you can, of course, take something specific that you create within your bigger picture, and then you can balloon it and say, okay, let's expand on this. It's a small, it's a fragment piece inside of here, but I think it's really important. And I want to focus on that for a little bit. So we're going to balloon that specific element.
Exactly.
And we're going to let that kind of help build. So honestly, it sounds like you can start from either way, but it sounds like you can use both methods throughout your world building process.
Exactly. And you will. It will help you once you start big and go small. Once you start having those concentric circles of all the things that touch this one point, you can start on those small points and then expand them out. Once I created that individual who is now the leader of this ink stain, well, now let's expand out what they have. And so this is where some inspiration can be able to come in and help you establish what that is. There was a class that I saw that was basically called the War Mage. And the War Mage is different in most D&D settings where they don't have access to leveled spells. They only can do cantrips. But cantrips is what they do right. And that is the idea of, well, not everybody is good at this magic. Nobody can do these higher level spells, but the basics, the things that everybody can be able to do, the firebolts and the prestidigitations and all that stuff, they can do really well.
Yeah.
And where you start expanding that out. All right, they have these individuals. What can you be able to do for those individuals? In the actual class, they're actually organized by the order of, they use chess pieces. So the order of the rook, the order of the bishop, the order of the pawn, the various other individuals. Well, how do these individual organizations get along with each other? How do they get along with everybody else? Well, they get along for the most part okay with themselves, but everybody else is kind of an enemy. Well, then now expanding out. How does everybody else feel about them? Do they know about them? Is this a secret organization? Is it something that's actually in the town? Or is it something that is puppeted or outside of it? That is kind of the idea that you can dive and then balloon into various hooks, into various plot ideas, into various stories that you can be able to tell.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Makes me think of like cliff divers. You dive off the cliff and then they get into the water and then they're like, oh yeah, this is deep water. I'm going to activate some kind of inflatable suit to bring them back up so that they can go do it again.
Exactly. But the nice thing about this is that you don't get the bends as you dive and rise.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. So we talked earlier about lore and we said that, world building isn't lore, but I would say that lore to some extent is world building.
Right. I will 100% agree. It is nice to be able to have your standing point of where you are right now, but how you got to that point can also influence how your world is. If you think of, the famous example is Critical Role and how right now, they just got done with their third campaign and now they're looking into the divergence, how everything had become. Well, Matt Mercer had all this idea before they even dived into it. And that was all developed because of the lore. And there are things to be able to help you with that. So for me, what I do is that I have two methods as well. Very similar to the balloon and dive, except I'd like to call them, as if you're looking on a Google map, the pinch and the spread. So the first one, the pinch, is essentially you start at either the beginning or you start at an event and then you pinch down. And like a pinch, you start wide and you go narrow. So that is where at the beginning, I knew I wanted to be able to have magic in this world. Okay, where did magic start? Okay, it started before everything else happened, before this world was established. Well, it started before everything was established. What was there? What was the inciting event? It's the gods. Like almost everything that seems to happen, it's the gods who helped develop the magic that came into here. Okay, cool. The gods have magic. How did we get it? Well, now you narrow it down. Well, it's not as if you could have divinity, and that's where clerics and things like that come in. But what about the regular man? How do we do that? In the world of Aestrom, what ends up happening is that you have people who help essentially write the language of magic, and they wrote it down into what's known as the prime tomes. So for those who don't know, in D&D, there are various classes or various schools of magic. And those schools of magic, transmutation, necromancy, conjuration, things like that. In this world, those schools are the tomes. This tome of conjuration is all that has ever been for conjuration.
Hmm.
But like most magic, it can expand, it can change and do that stuff. So it's an ever-writing tome. So, okay, so we have these tomes. Who were they written by? Well, these are the individuals who are known as the arcane settlers. They settled how magic works. They settled where the arcane comes from. Okay, cool. Now they're the ones who do it. How did they spread it? How did they actually figure out who gets what? Well, like everybody else who is here right now, they went to school. They created their school. And that's how they have the various colleges throughout the land. And these schools help develop others where they are now. How they can be able to actually do conjuration, transmutation, things like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Gotta go learn at the school that you want to learn the specifics from, right?
Exactly.
If you want to do conjuration magic, you're going to go down to the conjuration school.
Exactly. And this is great for establishing those places. Now you have a college where these can happen. Mm-hmm. And then after you do that, now you have a big overview. You have a college now. Now you can dive in, go back to the other methods that we have done. You can dive into that college and see, all right, we're at that college. All right, who's at the top? Who are the faculty members? Who is the nerd that everybody pokes fun at? Things like that.
Yes.
So these help establish the points where you can also do the other methods that we talked about.
Absolutely. And then there's a little bit of logic to it that kind of helps you stem out, right? If there's a college here, well, where are people living? Are they living in dormitories? And if there's resources here at the college, like where is the college getting its food from? Where is it getting its other resources from? Well, now we've got to design maybe a town or a village that kind of surrounds this college. And then from there, you're starting to build outwards. You're doing that,
the balloon is what we were talking about.
You're ballooning, yes. You're ballooning out and adding to that world. But with that being said, now we have the spread method, which you also mentioned.
Right. So the spread method is you take an individual point. This is great for improvers because now you are, oh shoot, now your players said that they are at this tavern now, and they're chasing this individual for whatever reason. All right, that individual's at the tavern. We know that. Let's spread out there. Why are they at the tavern? What led them to this point? What helped them establish this is why they're here? Okay, so they came here because they're looking for a contact. Okay, now let's spread back a little bit more. Why do they know that this contact is here? Or how do they know that contact was going to be there no matter what? Or are they searching for them? Okay, they knew that they were going to be there. They got that contact information from a higher up. Okay, who's that higher up? And then you start spreading out more. And then it doesn't have to be linear. It can be like when you're spreading out with your fingers on a map, you can see around and when you're using more than just 2 fingers for the spread, you can use 3 or 4. There are multiple paths as you spread out for how things got to this point. It is very good for when you're prepping for a session and you're like, oh shoot, they're here. I had established this. Now I got to figure out how they can be able to continue from this point in a satisfying way, because now you have a logic that is, all right, I'm spreading out more and more. This is how everything got here. This makes sense.
Right. So can we use, because we've already talked a little bit earlier about how we use the dive and the balloon method together. Is there other combinations that we can use to help us with different elements of creating our world?
Oh, absolutely. Like when we were talking about before, about now we created this balloon and then this dive all in one, or this dive and now you can balloon up. You will want to hybridize these. You will use various other ones to help you establish what your world is. So one thing that I'd like to be able to do is this dive and pinch. You're getting into this individual spot and you know exactly what happens. It's very good for understanding specific areas and being able to have these concepts get into a starting point for your players. So for example, you dive down and you pinch down into this individual point at this tavern. Okay, everybody is starting from big concepts. There are various kingdoms that are having problems. Okay, they're having problems. Okay, what's causing the problem? Okay, so in the past, these kingdoms were at a warring faction. Okay, that is, now you start to pinch onto that. Okay, they're warring. Why are they warring? Okay, so now they're fighting over this resource. Okay, they're fighting over this resource. Pinch down more. Okay, they're fighting over this resource. It's still ongoing. Okay, so is everybody exhausted? Are they tired? Okay, they're wanting this war to end and they've been at it for years. Okay, you pinch down more. Okay, so now individuals want to be able to start doing it. How are they going to start are there rebels? Are there individuals who want to be able to stop this war at any means necessary? Okay, yes, they do. They just want it to be done. And there are factions on both sides who just want to get it done. You get down to that end point, and now you're in a tavern. And that tavern is housing a secret meeting for either it could be one of your players, or it could just be happening at the same time for your players that is happening for this. And you start with this big concept of this warring nations, and now you're at this individual point.
Right, absolutely.
Same thing, you can be able to balloon and spread, help create those plot and hooks that you will eventually go to, something that your players could hear about, but don't necessarily have any context for right now. Like, for example, you start with an individual, and you start with how the individual associates with maybe the kingdom or maybe the town or something like that. And then you start spreading out. Now, I know I'm using a lot of D&D terminology because it's very easy to be able to do that, but you can also do this for if this is at a day camp, like the one that we keep going to. You start with the individual, the camper, who's one of your players, and you start there and you start spreading out from there. Okay, how did they come to this place? Okay, so they are here now. They came here because their family wanted them to be able to come to be able to enjoy the day camp. Well, why are they doing it? Do they not have time or things like that? Well, no, they don't really have time because they have a lot of other things going on. And then you help create that backstory for that individual. I was saying player character, but you could also do it for an NPC. Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like how it's kind of keeping things open too for yourself as the GM to let your players jump in and kind of help modify or change or add to your world as well by using their character as kind of a starting point to spread from. Exactly.
And out of all these methods, after you do them or as you're doing them, the one final thing I have to say is that you never, while you have your framework, your house is never going to be fully filled. Yes. I do not go up to my living room and I have a couch on top of a chair, on top of a table, on top of a TV. My whole house is not filled. Right. I have the ability to be able to move around in there. I have the ability to build if I need to, or even replace things. And that is the one thing that you want to do with your world as well. You want to be able to have enough room so that you can also be able to do more or have your players do more. You want your world to be able to progress. You want your world to not just be stuck in one space and time. Your world will continue to evolve, whether the players are there or not. As long as you let the world continue to have time, it will go and do things. I don't think, and this has helped me a lot, I don't think worlds should stagnate. Now, unless there's like a time curse or something that forces your world to stop, which is a cool plot interest, but that's outside of the scope. And then you can also start doing that world building of why are you at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. What created this time? Why did they create this time stopper? Whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. That's very cool. All right. So it's a lot of information, a lot of incredible information, and hopefully a lot of definitely a lot of very beneficial information for people that are trying to build our world. Let's kind of summarize our points, summarize our techniques, so that way hopefully everybody who's sitting here at the end, they're like, wow, that was a lot. Let's like invigorate and reestablish everything that we talked about so far.
Yes. So a summary of the techniques, the things to help you build your world. First things first, create boundaries. Yes. Create that house that your world will be in. Once you create that house, exactly, the 5 walls. Once you have created that house, give it details. Pinch down, zoom out, balloon, dive. Start creating that color that your room is. And as you're starting to do that, then that's when you blend and progress. Once you start getting the color in your room, then you leave it for your players, for your story, for time to continue to allow you to be inspired and add into that room into the future. Those are the techniques to be able to do it. And if you take nothing else away from here, if you take nothing else on how to build your world, I would like to at least leave you with these 5 points. Be inspired for anything that's out there to be able to add into your world. Be diligent in not just what you're building in that world, but in your note-taking. Let yourself know 5 years from now, 20 years from now, whenever you go into this world, you know why that thing is there, and maybe you evolve it. Maybe you have something that's a little different. Be interested in your world. You want to be there, or maybe you want things to change in there. But don't just have a blank wall. Don't just have a gray room that you can be able to do. Allow your world to progress. Allow there for it to be open and flexible for what happens. And that is the final thing. Be open to flexibility. Be open for your players to be able to help build the world. You can start with the framework of the world, but eventually your world will allow people to come in, and then you can be able to have that, and you got to have that flexibility so that it can be able to expand. Otherwise, you're making a novel. Yeah. That is all you're doing.
Absolutely. Which, again, totally fine if you are.
Right.
Not quite what we're going for here.
Exactly. Not
awesome.
for here.
Wow. Doug, thank you so much. This has just been some incredible information. Just so much and so much help to those out there that are trying to build their own worlds. Homebrewing, I think pretty much right when I learned how to play D&D, homebrewing was pretty much my straight go-to. I didn't have any of the books, any of the pre-created campaigns, so on and so forth. I just had my own imagination. And so I just started building stories within that. I had the monster manual. So I just kind of used that as sort of a base framework for creating the worlds and the stories that I wanted to run as a DM. And so it's awesome to be able to hear these amazing tips and tricks and direction of all. Oh my gosh, that's one thing that every home brewer wants, is just like, I need direction. I have ideas. How do I get them out? How do I get them onto paper? How should I structure this? And this is exactly what people need to help guide them so that they can build the world that they're trying to build and fill the world that they're trying to build.
Yes. And by building these worlds, you can do this either with a book or completely homebrew. But either way, you're going to want to use these techniques to help make something memorable. You may start with something that is maybe already written down. Maybe you are using one of those campaign books. But your players are going to go through, and they're going to try to see how this world progresses. They're never going to follow what that book is.
That's
true. So you got to be able to allow your world to expand.
Yes, absolutely. Got to have it. Let it do its thing. Let it become more than any one person could possibly fill it to be.
Exactly.
So, awesome. Doug, is there anything that you wanted to plug or anything else? I know you talked about your own world, which I know is something really cool that you've been working on. I know it's not really, I don't know if it's something that you were planning on publishing at any point, but is there anything that you wanted to pitch other than that or plug again for before we jump into the intramural game here?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything at this time. Maybe in the future I'll be able to develop not only this world and publish that, but like the various things that I put into that world for my other players to be able to enjoy. So
yeah, absolutely.
Nothing at this
I can't
time.
wait to see that. But with that being said, I know that you also do some voice acting work as well. And I think anybody that listens to this knows you have a phenomenal voice. And so definitely something worth checking out. I'll definitely try to put like some kind of a link in case you're somebody with a project maybe. I know you said that you recently actually did some narration for a book. So if you're somebody out there looking for either a narrator or maybe even character voices within your own world building, I think that would be a great way to plug you as well.
Yep. I will have links for you so that you can be able to check it out down below.
Fantastic. Awesome. All right, Doug, it's time to go into our intramural games. It's time for intramurals. All right, well, welcome everybody to the intramural games portion of our Session Zero University. For those that have listened in the past, you know this already, but for those that are maybe new to Session Zero University, we like to have a little bit of fun at the end of all of our class episodes. You know, we just got done learning so much amazing information. It's time to take a little bit of a break from learning and just kind of have a little bit of a goofy, fun time to sort of play, right? Because that's what we like to do. We like to pull out a TTRPG and we like to play it. So with that being said, we are going to be playing a game that Doug and I actually kind of just put together before we jumped into this episode. We never really came up with a title for it, but essentially it was based on the kind of concept of like jailbreak.
Yeah,
I was thinking, to a vague extent.
I was just thinking of a name like Oops.
Oops.
Oops. Oops, something happened. We got to figure this out now.
Uh-oh. we made a stinky.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. So with that being said, what we did was we wanted to plug off of the idea of world building. And so we created this kind of simple story game where we're going to take 3 prompts. We're going to take a setting. So this is going to be the sort of fictional concept, right? The is it fantasy? Is it sci-fi? So on and so forth. And then we're going to add in sort of the place that it's set in within that theme. Then we're going to take a predicament, the problematic situation that we are dealing with, that we have to overcome our character in this situation. And then, of course, we're going to take the character themselves and we're going to see what they look like. And then from there, we're going to take those 3 prompts and we're going to create the story. Obviously, it's very improv. Obviously, there's no stats. There's no dice rolling here or anything like that. It's kind of just a short, fun game that we're going to play. But with that being said, I actually have 4 different sort of prompt sets that I have already put together. And so I think we'll do just a 1d4 roll to see which one. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Sure. As the volunteer teacher of this course, I think that it's only fair that I go first. So
all right.
let me
Sounds
get
good.
online and roll some
Oh,
things.
you're going to roll your dice? Perfect.
Yep. So I got my dice rolled.
Go for it.
First prompt is going to be a 2.
2. All right. Sounds good. I rolled a 1, so I'll take prompt 1, but I'll give you the 2. And it's all 3 of the prompts are in here. So
Perfect. And so I can give you all the numbers, which is 2, then 1, then 4.
all right. Perfect. Sounds good. Okay. So for yours, the setting is I like how they name some of the stuff in here too. A remote, isolated island in the age of sail, shrouded in perpetual fog.
We're going One Piece on this.
Yeah, exactly. Your predicament is you are a disgraced navigator exiled to the island after a catastrophic navigational error led to the loss of your ship and crew. It's interesting how it says exiled as if it kind of alludes to the idea that you crashed the ship and now you're stuck here all by yourself. Now you must survive on your own, haunted by the ghosts of your past and the whispers of the island's ancient malevolent magic. And then, of course, your character. Let's get a little bit into them. We already know they're a disgraced navigator. Let's find out more. A seasoned sailor named Finn. Little typical, but that's okay. Possessing a worn-out sextant, a tattered map of the treacherous seas, and a rusty cutlass. You also carry a small, intricately carved wooden bird, a gift from your late captain, which you believe holds a hidden message or a clue to your redemption.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So, for those playing at home, the method that I will use right now is the dive method. Starting from the big world that we now have, the world shrouded in fog. Now we will dive into this island. This island is an individual island that not many have enjoyed or been able to explore. We start at that big island, now we go down. All right, what is in this island? What do we have available to us? It's a desert island. We don't have much to be able to survive on, but people are still alive here, although only the natives, and they don't have a lot to go with. So inside this desert island, there is an oasis. That oasis is where all the individuals are. This is the only place where any fresh water is able to come through. This is the only place where vegetation and actual food can be able to survive. So Finn, the one who has the sextant to be able to try to find his way, though disgraced as he may be, Finn finds his way through the island, navigating through the stars that can only be seen every once in a while as the fog tries to obscure them. But with the help of the navigation, he's able to get through and find these natives, the individuals who are here on the island that they call Nexoma. Nexoma, for whatever reason, is isolated but still has this life-giving source. We're going to dive into even farther. How does it have this water? How does it able to have this vegetation survive? Well, as Finn is starting to explore, he gets the trust of the individuals. He's alone after all. He doesn't have much, and they can see the rust on his saber, on the individual parts that he has, and they can tell he needs help. Well, they haven't experienced this individual yet, so they have no reason to distrust him. They go in and they show him down inside this basically oasis area. There's a crystal of ever-flowing pure water. Oh, it's beautiful. Just this glacial blue. Oh, Finn has never seen anything like it, and he feels a tinge of pain on his heart, knowing that he could not actually be able to bring the rest of his crew here for the accident that happened that caused him to crash their ship outside of this island. And that's where we start our adventure. And that's the world that we have. We are now in this Isle of Nexoma.
Nice. I love it. And that's, hey, you know what? We kind of just gave people a free little adventure that they can run there.
Exactly.
Maybe there's a couple more survivors from the crash of the ship so that you can have a couple more players involved. But there you go. Wow, that was awesome. All right, Doug. I rolled. I will tell you my prompts.
Okay.
So my setting is going to be very different. We're talking a cyberpunk megacity, specifically a neon-drenched district known as the Grid. My predicament, and this is all very like Cyberpunk 2077 here. You are a data runner, a courier who smuggles sensitive information across corporate firewalls. You just stolen a crucial piece of software that exposes a major corporation's illegal activities, but now I'm being hunted by their ruthless security forces. My name, or my character, a nimble and resourceful street urchin named Glitch, adept at navigating the city's back alleys and hacking into unsecured networks. You possess a modified data chip containing the stolen software, a grappling hook, and a small arsenal of improvised cybernetic enhancements.
Ooh, interesting.
So first off, I want to dive into the character Glitch. It's mentioned that he's a street urchin, which is interesting because of the fact that he has such a crucial piece of software from a major corporation. How did he get this? Let's start with zooming in and finding out a little bit more about Glitch. He went to school, even though he was orphaned at a young age, and he was kind of that bad kid in school, right? He wasn't super attentive to the actual class itself, but there was a hidden potential within him. He was very smart, most specifically when it came to hacking and technology. Hence why he's able to have this small arsenal of improvised cybernetic enhancements, things that he's tampered with, things that he's scrounged up amidst the streets of the Grid, and things that he's enhanced himself to be able to connect to himself and be able to better himself as far as this kind of stuff goes. He's focused a lot on the hacking element. He wants to focus on diving in and getting software. And of course, with any street urchin, there's very Oliver Twist in the sense that amidst the streets you have, of course, these questionable individuals who will hire people, pay people to do these illegal activities if they see potential in them. And of course, Glitch has gotten in with these shady crowd. So of course, Glitch takes a job, one that he didn't know the extent of, and one that he's certainly being paid too little for. A major corporation, or at least he didn't realize it was a major corporation at first, just a offshore account, you could say, a separate entity that this company has set up that he was paid a small fee to hack into and steal secrets from, not knowing that this was a major corporation's owned section. They're sort of a sub-network, you could say. And of course, stealing this catches the attention of the individuals. Now, normally this isn't a big deal. If it is actually a small operation, there's not much they can do about it in the Grid, right? These companies, they see this kind of stuff all the time. Small bits of information go here and there. It's just a little bit of data mining that happens here and there. They're not too worried about it, and it's too much of an expense to possibly send a whole amass of guards to chase after an individual for taking. But this was a secret sort of side sub-network, something they didn't think anybody would even notice, which is why they put their biggest secrets there. So now, Glitch's got a hold of something far more valuable than he was expecting, and unfortunately, the individual that was paying him for it is not going to take that fall for him. So, Glitch is tasked with finding some way to get out of the trouble that he's landed himself in the Grid.
Oh, that is so good. And for those playing at home, you just saw, while we were calling it dive, this was specifically the spread method.
That's true. Yes.
You start with the individual and you're going through his backstory, spreading out.
Yes, absolutely.
And as you can tell, so many individual connections to it. You started with talking about his past and how he got into hacking, and then you also got into why he's in this situation. Multiple threads that come from one place.
So much potential. So whether you're playing a pirate adventure like Doug's pitch, or you're playing something a bit into the future like my pitch, we hope that the world building that we have taught you, or specifically Doug has taught you all about today, will help you in building that world and that exciting adventure that your players are about to go on. Doug, thank you again for being on the show. Thank you for sharing this invaluable information to all of us who are just desperately trying to build really cool stuff out there in TTRPG land. And we just need a little bit of direction, a little bit of guidance to help get us to where we need to be in order to run the campaigns that we want to run.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I honestly believe that a lot of people out there have a ton of great ideas. Sometimes you just need to focus in, and having some of these tips and tools, you can help create a memorable and glorious world.
Absolutely. So hopefully you guys all learned something. We'll see you guys next time on another class from Session Zero University. Thank you so much for joining us for today's class. We hope you gained some new knowledge and ideas from our incredibly knowledgeable professors, which you can take with you to your table and implement into your games and sessions. If you enjoy what we're developing here at Session Zero University, then be sure to check out our lessons in practice by checking out various actual play episodes. We have tested and recorded a variety of games, systems, stories, and themes for your enjoyment, from Dungeons & Dragons to Powered by the Apocalypse to Kids on Bikes and more. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Session Zero Heroes podcast so you don't miss out on any of our future TTRPG content. Our show is available everywhere podcasts can be found, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube, so there are plenty of places that you can follow and listen from. We encourage you to check us out on social media as well, whether you're prevalent on Facebook, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, or Discord. We're there, and we'd love for you to join our community. And if you're willing, we would truly appreciate you dropping a review on whatever platform you're listening to if it allows you to do so. Your feedback means a lot and helps others to discover our show. Thank you so much, and we'll see you for your next class at Session Zero University, run by the Session Zero Heroes podcast.